uh, uh, how this works, but this is, I'll let the recording start. Okay. This is the endorsement interview for House District 28. And just to start, would you introduce yourself, to give a brief bio of yourself and explain just very briefly why you're running for 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Winsvey Campos, running for House District 28. I work as the case manager for Families Promise of Beaverton. It's a transitional housing program that helps families experiencing homelessness get into housing. And the work that I do is essentially the catalyst for me having made the decision to run. I had a day at work where I had one too many conversations with the families that I serve about the lack of resources and solutions in the area. I started out the day on the phone with somebody who by the end of the phone call knew that they were going to be sleeping outside. And I ended that day with a mom breaking down in tears in front of me, asking me how she was supposed to put a roof over her children's head when she works 40 hours a week and only makes minimum wage. And she laid out what those numbers meant for her. That meant that she made a little over $1,700 after taxes, and a 2-bedroom last year in the area, which is what she was looking for, averaged a little over $1,300. And so she left, and I sat at my desk feeling really angry and frustrated. And I thought to myself, what we need is change at a policy level. We need people that are on the front lines of the most pressing issues that we're facing, but we also need people to bring diverse lived experiences and perspectives. As somebody who grew up in a low-income household, I bring those perspectives that I believe we're very much missing in the building. My father was a single parent, and from the age of 8 until I left for college, my family lived in a motel room because that's what we could afford. And there were times in my life we had to go to the public library restroom to roll sheets of toilet paper to take home so that we could save money that week and put it towards bills. I remember the look on my dad's face on Christmases when he felt heartbroken to not be able to give us presents, which, you know, at the end of the day wasn't a big thing, but it's those things that I carry with me and will carry with me into the building, those values that center me and have instilled in me a sense of social justice and advocacy.
Could you, maybe I didn't catch it, but what's your current job? What exactly do you do for the agency?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So my job specifically is to work with families. We initially started out just serving the families in the Beaverton area, but since COVID has started, we've actually expanded our services significantly. I mean, more than doubled my caseload during this time to be able to further serve those just in Washington County in general, and not just Beaverton, though we have focused on Beaverton specifically because the Beaverton School District has come out at the top of the list for consecutive years of having the highest number of students experiencing homelessness in the whole state of Oregon. But my job is to work directly with the families to address any barriers they might have to getting into housing, whether that be, and that ranges from a number of different things, whether that's addressing criminal history, addressing any landlord or utility debt, and helping them access mental health services they might need. I work with folks who come from a variety of different backgrounds and who have come to us for a number of different situations, whether it's circumstantial or otherwise. And so I help them problem solve to address these barriers. And throughout this time, but specifically once they're what we say housing ready, and their advocate, whether that be to the county, to community action, which essentially holds all of the rent assistance funding in the county, whether that is to a landlord or property manager. One of the things that I have very direct insight to is that a lot of these systems and services that we have are not user friendly. And I have seen the way in which folks just aren't able to they don't get calls back, or particularly if there are a lot of barriers there, and maybe they've been in the situation for a while. It can certainly be more difficult to pull yourself out if you aren't familiar with navigating these services. So I help these families navigate the services. I help them problem solve, and I am their advocate. And of course, the end goal is to get them into stable housing and keep them there. We continue to offer a year of case management services after they get into housing, with the goal of keeping them stable, because as we know, things don't just automatically get better once you're into housing. Life happens, and so we're there during that time.
So do you have a policy, a priority bill related to your work that you would like to offer in your first term, should you be elected?
So I certainly, one could say that housing is something I'm quite passionate about, given the work that I do, but also the experience I had with housing insecurity growing up. My dad was also homeless for about a month a couple of years ago because of circumstances outside of his control. And it, honestly felt quite ironic, because at that time I was already doing the work that I do, helping others get into housing, and there wasn't a whole lot I could do for my dad. And so it's certainly something I'm passionate about, and I have a number of different policies that I would like to see worked on in housing. One of which would be to fully eliminate no-cause eviction.
And are you seeing, so where, okay, I'm going back to my memory of before COVID, of the bills passed on no-cause evictions. They did limit them, and I believe it was no causes were allowed for the first year of tenancy. You want to see that removed? Is that where you're seeing people get no cause evicted at this point?
Yes. So what I have seen with no-cause evictions is that it is something that has been used to essentially, no-cause evictions make it easier to discriminate against communities of color. It limits tenants' agency to feel as if they can complain about repairs. And I have heard it said, I've heard the frustrations from folks that say that they will not report when a repair is necessary because they fear that they will be evicted because of that. And I've seen it time and time again used as a tool in that way.
Okay.
And, I think it is important to note that we are a state that has just cause eviction.
So is there any policy solutions to what you were describing of how difficult it is for families to navigate what is available to them? Like the fact that you need to be their advocate a lot of times to get them access to services?
I think I understood your question, and I'm going to respond in the way in which I think I understood it. And if I'm not responding correctly, just let me know, or not correctly, but you know it.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe that we need to make investments in affordable housing. We see overwhelmingly that it is a primary reason for the housing crisis that we're facing in Oregon, is that we lack affordable housing. In investing in those affordable housing services, we need to include wraparound services with that, because again, we've got a couple of different problems. We've got the lack of affordable housing, but we also have, the fact that a lot of these agencies that do this work are often lacking funding, which means that their staff are overwhelmed, It means that there is burnout that happens. I have seen with an agency that I work pretty closely with, I've seen a position change 3 or 4 times in the time that I have worked for Family Promises Beaverton, and I have talked with these housing workers about how burnt out they feel, about how large their caseload is. So we need to be investing in these services. We also need to make sure that we are taking care of employees.
Okay. So beyond housing, is there other priorities for you in the legislature?
Absolutely. I have campaigned, so my top 3 priorities that I have campaigned on are healthcare, housing, and climate change. And of course, a number of these are on the forefront. I think all of them are on the forefront of what we are dealing with as a state, as a country, whether that is with the wildfires that we're seeing now, that we know it won't be the last of what we see. So we need to address climate change, and I know that this coming year it's sounding like we will not see a clean energy job bill, but we certainly need to make sure that we are doing what we can in terms of emergency management services to address, when we see something again come up like this with the wildfires. So the other one that I campaigned on, healthcare, there's so many folks right now, myself included, that in the midst of a pandemic do not have healthcare coverage. So I think as a state I know that as a state we need to look at expanding the Oregon Health Plan. As I've mentioned, I work with folks who are literally homeless. And one of the most frustrating parts of my work is seeing the way in which folks aren't able to access services like the Oregon Health Plan. These folks are homeless, and they cannot access the Oregon Health Plan because, there are certain things that you have to meet. I think the Oregon Health Plan is great in what it is meant to do, and I grew up on the Oregon Health Plan. But there's still so much work there that needs to be done.
So why would someone who is poor enough to be homeless not be able to access the Oregon Health Plan? Is it an income issue, or what's the?
So sometimes it's an income issue. They're like slightly above, and when you look at the guidelines, like you have to be quite poor. And I mean, so sometimes it's the income piece. Sometimes it is that they can't access dental care or vision care. I have had folks who have been in our program who have had pain in their molars, and we have had to keep an eye out for free dental mobile clinics that have shown up, and grateful for those. But dental care right now is something that if you're an adult cannot necessarily access with the Oregon Health Plan. Also, again, with vision, and I think it's an issue that we see across the board with healthcare, is that dental care and vision are not always are not considered a part of healthcare, and so that's part of what we certainly need to remedy, because our eyes, our teeth, it doesn't stop at our shoulders.
So this is on climate change. I want to ask you something I asked another candidate who came in. So Democrats are definitely, supporting legislation related to climate change. At the same time, 40% of state emissions come from transportation, and there does not seem to be a wholesale embracing of addressing climate change by the Oregon Department of Transportation. I'm wondering if you have a view on whether ODOT should not be expanding car lanes, if that's a line that you draw. It wasn't for this representative, I'll tell you. But is that something, is there any, so two questions. Is that something you would support, not expanding single occupancy car lanes on our roads? And if not that, is there a definitive policy line for you? I ask this because in Portland, the Rose Quarter and the next Columbia River crossing, though it's not called that these days, are big issues.
So I definitely have an opinion on this. I do not believe we should be expanding car lanes at this point in time. Studies have shown us that doesn't, what that does is I mean, you create that space for cars to be on, and the cars are going to be there. Instead, I think we should be making significant investments in public transportation. One of the things that I've talked a lot about, specifically within District 28, because transportation is an issue that I've heard a lot about from voters, particularly in unincorporated Washington County. But one of the things that I've talked a lot about is a bus rapid transit lane. Right now, in a lot of places within the Portland metro area, buses have to fight the same traffic, that I would if I get in my car. And so you are sitting in a bus for about an hour where it might take you 20 minutes in your car to get somewhere. So if you have a car and you have that choice between sitting on a bus for an hour or getting somewhere in your car in 20 minutes, you're going to take your car, right? I mean, I know I've made that decision many times. And so what a bus rapid transit lane is it creates a lane specifically for the public transportation. So maybe it's not that you're sitting on the bus for an hour, but a half hour. That 10 minutes is something that a lot more folks are willing to give up. And so we are getting cars off the road at that point because we are incentivizing folks. We're incentivizing folks to use public transportation. And we're also helping people's mental health because they are not sitting angrily in traffic.
All right. So we, Willamette Week values candidates who aren't just party loyalists, but are able to think independently. Is there something where you have disagreed with what the Democratic caucus has done recently?
So that is a fantastic question. And I certainly agree it's important that we're not just, towing the party line, but that we are looking out for, for our constituents, for our communities. And what I would say right now, that is something that is at the forefront, whether that be in the Portland metro area or having seen talks of this in the special session, it would be around criminal justice. And I think as a party, we have not yet and I've seen this I've already seen this in county platforms as folks talk about solutions to police brutality and these issues. I think we as a party, we have not embraced the concept that property damage is not a violent crime, and we continue to treat it as such.
And Rachel, do you mind if I ask?
Go right ahead.
During the special session, I think in June, the legislature passed that package of criminal justice reform bills. I'm wondering, what was your perspective on that? Did you think those bills were sufficient, or was there something you would like to change about that should you be elected, in terms of, you know, a specific policy, or whether or not they were too lax on tear gas, for example? Just what's your overall analysis of that?
So first of all, I would certainly applaud the BIPOC caucus for the work they did in bringing that and censoring it. But I myself, and I know that folks in the building agree, including those who worked on these bills, that there is more to be done. I firmly believe that that tear gas should not be used. It has been, sorry, what is the word I'm looking for? Labeled, signified as the use of tear gas being a war crime, right, by the UN, and yet we still continue to use tear gas without knowing the full effect of what it does. We do know that it is an abortive. I was about to say that wrong. That it can cause abortions. We know that, and I will tell you that I have been downtown a couple of times. I've been downtown a few times and stood near people who have their hands in the air. We're not throwing anything. We're not engaging in any violence, but we're literally standing with their hands in the air, and we're tear gassed. And I was among them, and I can tell you that I felt the immediate effects of cramps, and so again, we don't know the full effects of tear gas, and yet it's still being used. And so I think we should ban the use of tear gas in this state. But I also think the bills that were passed still allow chokeholds to happen in certain circumstances, and you're getting into a space there where it's too easy to find, I guess, loopholes. And loopholes feels like the wrong term to use when we're talking about a human life. But that's, at the end of the day, that's where I stand on that.
So would you support an outright tear gas ban and an outright chokehold ban statewide?
100%.
Okay.
So I think, Tess, unless you have other questions. Okay. So we have one fun question at the end, and this time it is, what's the most awkward experience you've had on a Zoom call?
So back during the primary, we were a few days out from election day, and so I was pretty tired. And I reached the point in the campaign where I started to get a little lax on my Zoom outfit. And we had a volunteer event one evening over Zoom, and what I had done was throw on like a t-shirt and threw a blazer on over it because a blazer dresses anything up. But I also threw on a pair of bright yellow athletic running shorts. And so I gave my spiel on the Zoom call and finished, and thought that I had turned my camera off. So I went to go get myself a snack and returned and realized that everybody had just seen me stand up in my bright yellow shorts.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming to talk with us. Good luck with the rest of the campaign, and endorsements will be out on the 14th.
Thanks, Winsvey. Take care.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, oh, we should stop recording.
Hold on.